I think it's going to be Aspinall. I think they're trying to come to some sort of an agreement. The rumor is that he wants $30 million, and the UFC is going to pay it.
Since this is the last time we'll speak to you, probably for the remaining of the year, Jones versus Aspinall, is that sort of the big priority, and you think that's the biggest fight the promotion can put on in 2025?
100%. And I think it's probably the biggest fight in heavyweight history, and it's a massive fight in the history of the company too.
Renowned American podcaster Joe Rogan has called out Tom Aspinall as the fastest fighter in the entire UFC history, but he also warned him to be aware of secret skills that Jon Jones only showed in the ring.
Here's a question with Aspinall. What happens with Aspinall in the second round? All of his fights, like all together, he's fought like 10 minutes. Aspinall's one of the fastest heavyweights. He might be the fastest heavyweight in the history of the sport. Look how fast he moves in. That guy's so fast.
Joe Rogan praised UFC rising star Tom Aspinall, comparing him to a younger Cain Velasquez, but Rogan pointed out that Aspinall's ability to go beyond the first round remains untested due to his habit of finishing fights quickly.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how Aspinall is past the first round, right? Because we've seen him. He looks so fast. He looks, you're like, nobody moves like him. He looks like a younger Cain.
Right.
But he just keeps knocking these guys out so quick. So I'm like, let me see him past the first round to see if he has that cardio as well.
It's a bit of a problem for him, right? Because he has not been tested in that way. And, you know, you're getting up to elite status where you're calling out Jon Jones.
Yeah.
Right? That's the boogeyman. Like, Jon Jones is the boogeyman. And maybe he hasn't died, but he's probably he's probably knocked on the door a couple of times like, what's going on, Death? You in there?
Surprisingly, Joe Rogan also revealed that Jon Jones did not even do training for his fight. Rogan also mentioned Jones's first fight with Alexander Gustafsson, noting that Jones barely trained for it, but still managed to turn up the intensity in the 4th and 5th rounds to secure victory.
You know, Jon Jones has had some trials and tribulations, but the skill set and the ability to push deep into rounds is nuts. Like, Jon when he fought Gustafsson, he had almost no training camp. They said he barely showed up. Like, you know, I talked to Jackson about it, and Greg Jackson was telling me, he's like, he didn't even train for that fight.
Wow.
He didn't even train. And then he pulled that fight off in the 4th and 5th rounds. That's when he like really turned it up. So you're talking about a guy who hasn't even been training. And then you saw the real Jon Jones in the second fight. That's motivated Jon Jones.
Rogan reveals a stark difference between an unprepared Jones and a fully focused, determined version of the UFC legend. This will be a great threat to Tom Aspinall.
Because, like, I'm going to show you what the f is really up. And then he just out of Gustafsson in the second fight.
And I wonder if it's going to get him to that point, all this talking from Aspinall, so they get him motivated, right? Or is he going to be at a point like, let me be done with Stipe and be done with it, but I don't want a heavyweight motivated Jon Jones if I'm on the other side. Like,
yeah.
The way he just pulled Gon down so easily and choked him out, I was like, bro.
Yeah.
And then Gon looks good his last 2 fights.
Aspinall is like, we've only seen him smash.
The uncertainty about how Aspinall would fare against Jon Jones in a grueling 5-round fight remains a key talking point. Joe Rogan speculated whether Tom Aspinall's confidence might motivate Jon Jones, or if Jones is nearing the end of his career after Stipe Miocic. He emphasized Jones's dominance, highlighting his effortless win over Cyril Gane and the danger of a fully motivated Jon Jones.
We've never seen him be the nail.
Nobody ever, right? And I thought Pavlovich was going to be the one that's like, all right, it's going to be a banger. And then he just puts him to sleep.
And he took Pavlovich's fight with a rib. He couldn't even wrestle.
Yeah, short notice too, right?
I mean, imagine you going up against Pavlovich, you know the only guys who's ever beat him was Overeem, and Overeem took him down, beat him up on the ground. And you're like, I got to get this guy down. This guy's knocking everybody dead.
Yeah.
And he knocks him out standing. He's so fast for a heavyweight. But again, you're saying the right thing. Like, what is it like in the 5th round with Jon Jones?
Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall are set to unify the UFC heavyweight division in 2025. After that, talk immediately turned to a unification clash with Tom Aspinall, who claimed an interim title during his spectacular run through the division, which included quick stoppage wins over Curtis Blades, Sergey Pavlovich, and Alexander Volkov. Jon Jones had an intense reaction after Dana White referred to him as the pound-for-pound greatest fighter in UFC history.
Who is the pound-for-pound #1 in the UFC, and who is the greatest of all time?
Listen, it is my belief that as long as this guy is active, he's the best. The pound-for-pound best in the world, and he's the greatest of all time.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. You good? You good?
Dana White is currently working away behind the scenes to make what he believes could be the biggest fight in UFC history, and MMA fans are impatiently waiting for an official announcement. One UFC fan couldn't wait to see how Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall plays out in 2025, so they've used the EA Sports video game UFC 5 to get an early prediction for the fight. A YouTuber matched the heavyweight duo together and simulated the 5-round affair. As he often does, Aspinall scored an early knockdown in the AI simulation of his fight with Jones. The Englishman followed up with nasty ground strikes but was unable to finish the fight, which quickly became a grappling match. Meanwhile, Jon Jones addressed the possibility of fighting Tom Aspinall, making it clear that Aspinall doesn't appeal to him as a matchup. From a business and legacy standpoint, Jones believes Pereira is the more logical and meaningful opponent.
I guess the clarifying question then is, if Dana and Hunter do come to you after this fight, the figures make sense to you, would you then be open to fighting Tom Aspinall, or are you categorically thinking, he does nothing for me, I will not fight that guy?
He does nothing for me. He does nothing for me. If you're a person that wants to see me really challenged, then I get it. 7 years younger, like 35 pounds bigger than me, right? I get it. It's like, wow, this Jon's so good. We finally found someone way younger and way bigger than him.
Jones argues that, as a fighter with a long and successful career, he should aim to fight opponents who will add more value to his legacy, like Alex Pereira, who is not only a formidable competitor, but also has significant accolades.
Let's see how he does against that. I get that narrative. But for me, if you were my manager, if you were on my team, why not fight against Pereira, a guy who's the same age as you, and we walk around the same exact size? Business-wise, it makes more sense. Fight the, I'm gonna call him this, fight the nobody that may be more dangerous, or fight the guy with all the accolades who's incredibly dangerous, but it actually will affect your legacy.
The greatest fighter of all time was able to dominate with his wrestling, but he didn't come close to finding a finish on the floor. Jones has been honest about his aversion to fighting Aspinall. The 37-year-old fight icon would prefer to face light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira instead, but the UFC bosses have no interest in making that matchup right now. Dana White recently guaranteed that Jones will fight Aspinall at some point next year. 100%, he said during a recent press conference when asked if the heavyweight unification bout is the biggest he can make in 2025. White further added, "I think it's probably the biggest fight in heavyweight history, and it's a massive fight in the history of the company too. It's a big fight." The reporter pointed out that Jones has been on the fence about fighting Aspinall before White interjected to provide a promising negotiations update. He added, "It's weird. Let me tell you what's weird about that. So usually those guys say that behind the scenes and not publicly. Jon says that publicly and not behind the scenes. Jon is a very unique individual to deal with. From day one, I've been confident that Jon Jones would do that fight. Even before UFC 309, I said, if he won, there's no way Jon doesn't do the fight. Jon Jones isn't afraid to fight anybody, and that's a fact." Michael Jai White responded to the question about Jon Jones picking his fights and potentially avoiding Tom Aspinall. He acknowledged that while Aspinall is a talented fighter, from a legacy standpoint, he also hinted at a fighter who would be more accurate for Jon Jones.
I mean, Jon's account is accurate. Tom Aspinall's new. There was a lot of new people that came and went, okay? Tom Aspinall is very talented, but if he's talking about legacy, I gotta say, you know, Alex Pereira is a 2-division champion. Tom Aspinall has the interim championship.
Michael Jai White confidently stated that a fight between Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall will eventually happen, asserting that once it does, any doubts about Jones's legacy will be silenced for good.
And I dare I say, I think Jon has gotten better. he shut out the longest winning heavyweight champion there was. He shut him down. And I'm talking about, like, when I talk about that, you know, those untelegraphed punches he threw, which is another thing we worked on, that he's looks like he freaking mastered.
Dana White recently made headlines with his candid remarks about Jon Jones and the dynamics behind certain fight decisions. In a bold statement, White addressed past controversies, calling one particular move the goofiest in UFC history. He stated, and that wasn't him, it was his team and he listened to his team for whatever reason. But that's like the goofiest move in UFC history. Other than that, Jon Jones behind the scenes is not a guy who turns down fights. I'll say 100% the fight will happen. Jon Jones may claim Tom Aspinall lacks notoriety, but UFC CEO Dana White clearly thinks otherwise. After Jones dispatched of Stipe Miocic by third-round TKO on Saturday at UFC 309 to defend the heavyweight championship, White has a strong craving to see a unification bout with interim title holder Aspinall, who has been campaigning hard to get a fight with Bones. Unfortunately for Aspinall, though, Jones thinks he's an asshole who is annoying. Jones said both before and after UFC 309 that he has no interest in fighting Aspinall and would rather vacate the belt than give the Brit an opportunity to compete against him. UFC fighter Khamzat Chimaev recently expressed his admiration for Jon Jones, praising the legendary fighter for his skills and dominance in the octagon. Chimaev also mentioned how Jones's influence has shaped the sport and inspired many fighters, including himself.
Jon Jones is like, still, he's the best fighter in the world right now. He has most title defenses. He has 2 weight class champion. He's never lost. Still, being youngest champion in UFC. If you speak about MMA, everyone knows Jon Jones. In history, nobody like him. For sure, he's dream match for everyone who wants to be in the history. Hope I'm younger than him. Hope he's not gonna go soon. He from this job, so get this fight as well. So when I get up, I like him. I like his training. I watching his training.
The only thing that would open the door in Jones's mind is if the UFC offered him money but did not share a specific number. White said Jones will be properly compensated and displayed only confidence a deal will get done, and if it does, White thinks it will be an all-time event. White told MMA Junkie and other reporters at the UFC 309 post-fight press conference it would be the biggest heavyweight fight in UFC history by a long shot. It's going to be the biggest heavyweight fight ever, and it'll probably be the biggest fight we've ever had. White said he loves Jones being pitted in a position of doubt. White has been Jones's strongest supporter in recent years, touting him as the world's top pound-for-pound fighter and best combat sports athlete in history. The UFC boss was impressed with what he saw from Jones against Miocic, and White was highly intrigued about how Jones would approach a fight with Aspinall. White said, he's got the highest fight IQ. He's like fucking Elon Musk in the octagon. This guy is brilliant in there, and the things he pulls off are amazing. I don't know what he'll do with Aspinall. Israel Adesanya shared his thoughts on a potential Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall matchup, praising both fighters. He described Aspinall and his father as great people and noted Aspinall's surprising physical presence, being thick and fast, which Adesanya sees as a key danger.
But Aspinall, he and his dad, cool dudes, lovely guys as well. But he's the same height as me, if not an inch taller, but thick. And I was like, fuck, you're a lot thicker than I would expect. And the speed, that's the thing that I'm like, okay, that's the danger. But again, grappling, he's a black belt. Jon it's different. But I don't know, man. They gotta fight, but if they don't ever fight, we'll never know.
MMA analyst Nick Pete shared his thoughts on a potential fight between reigning heavyweight champion Jon Jones and current interim heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall. He pointed out that Jones might have one probable disadvantage over Aspinall. Speaking with Michael Bisping and Adam Catterall, Nick Pete discussed the potential Jones versus Aspinall fight. Pete observed Jones's last fight against Stipe Miocic and emphasized that Bones' striking has slowed, which is where Aspinall could take advantage. He said, Jon Jones against Stipe Miocic made me think that there's plenty of Jon Jones left to cause Tom Aspinall all kinds of trouble, but what I also saw was Jon Jones striking with his hands being a lot slower than he was at light heavyweight, and that's where Tom Aspinall takes over. During his appearance on ESPN's First Take, White revealed that Jones has never dismissed the idea of fighting Aspinall behind the scenes. White assured fans that Jones is willing to face Aspinall, adding that the matchup will be one of the biggest fights in UFC history. White stated, Jon Jones has never said behind the scenes, I won't fight Tom Aspinall. It's the exact opposite. Jones is like 37 or 38 years old now, has these huge gaps in between fights. He is not afraid to fight Tom Aspinall. He will fight Aspinall, and it will be the biggest fight in UFC history. Fans around the world are buzzing with excitement as the long-anticipated showdown between Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall is finally set. This epic clash brings together the unmatched dominance of Jones, a legend in the sport, against the unstoppable momentum of Aspinall, the heavyweight division's fastest rising star. UFC light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira has given his take on Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. Dana White hopes UFC heavyweight champion Jones will unify the title with interim champ Tom Aspinall. If the much desired bout does end up taking place, Pereira backs the undisputed champion to retain his belt. Pereira added his prediction: "I think Jon Jones has a lot of experience on his side. Some people say Aspinall this, Aspinall that, but it comes down to experience. Jon Jones is a seasoned guy. He's been there, so I think he wins." After Jones retained his heavyweight title with a round 3 TKO of Stipe Miocic at UFC 309, he expressed interest in fighting Pereira, not Aspinall. Pereira, who is expected to defend his title against Magomed Ankalaev, still welcomes Jones with open arms. Pereira further stated, "Everybody knows my interest in fighting him, and I was happy to see the initiative he had to speak that on the microphone, to express to everybody that he wants to fight me. We both want it, but it doesn't come down to us. We have to see what plans the organization has for us." However, Michael Bisping broke down whom he thinks could be UFC champion by the end of 2025, and one of his picks was a fight that would shake up the entire combat sports industry, as he expects his compatriot Aspinall to do the business on Jones if and when they finally come to blows. Bisping called the fight, should it be made, the biggest heavyweight fight the sport has ever seen, maybe the biggest fight period that this sport has ever seen. He finished by remarking that when the dust settles, it will be Aspinall's name confirmed as the new champ rather than and still for Jones. As the MMA world braces for this monumental clash, one thing is certain: Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall is more than just a fight. It's a collision of eras, legacies, and styles. What do you think about the potential matchup between Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall? Is it a fight that excites you, or do you agree with Jon's stance on legacy and challenges? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.